the cities, have become the motors or the economic motors of this country. So we need to help them in any way they can. And the larger cities often suffer the most because of just sheer wear and tear. If you look at a city like Toronto or Vancouver or Montreal, in our case.
The federal government is now accepting applications for the next wave of projects in the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund. It's a $1 billion federal pot of cash that local municipalities can apply to get funding to help pay for infrastructure projects meant to help with natural disasters and climate change. But that $1 billion federal fund could have a lasting impact on your property taxes.
Oh, it's huge. We're talking in some cases accelerating a project by 10 years, so it would have happened 10 years from now. Instead of it happening 10 years from now, it's going to happen next year. It can really improve the community that much faster.
Projects covered by the fund include things like sewage systems or dikes to prevent flooding, the kinds of infrastructure that help with adapting to our changing climate. The projects are needed, but the banana peel for municipalities is that they'll be on the hook for any ongoing costs.
It's like buying a car. You have to be able to afford the fuel or the tires or the insurance. And it's not just about the purchase price of the car. It's about maintaining that car and running it for many, many years. And in the case of city infrastructure, we're talking about decades.
Maureen Bullos, a former Montreal Borough councillor, says one problem is political short-term thinking. Many of these projects are extremely unexciting until they fail.
There is no money set aside because oftentimes there isn't enough money for the day-to-day operations and the day-to-day stuff that people do see, and that citizens will vote someone in or out based on. You're not going to vote somebody in for a second or third term because they changed the sewer pipe.
Jesse Helmer says the best municipalities already budget for these ongoing costs before even putting a shovel in the ground. But he acknowledges the burden is tough. Cities have few sources of revenue and many obligations.
Municipalities are getting less than 10% of all the taxes raised in the country. And on the other hand, they're owning most of the assets, right? So they own the majority of the assets. They've only got really property tax and grants from other levels of government, user fees as sources of revenue.
Many Canadian municipalities are in budget season now, and some will have entries for projects associated with the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund. While the cost burden is being shared, something Bullos and Helmer say didn't always happen in the past, ultimate responsibility for these projects still falls on local government.
All the policies happen at a much higher level at 30,000 feet and all these things that are decided by the provincial and the federal government. But the action is on the ground, and one level of government basically drops the problem to the next level.
In Ottawa, Xiao Li, City News.